always happy to see the former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. He's always kind to visit us often when he is in New York City. He was the Republican governor of New Mexico from 1994 to 2003. Before that, he parlayed a door-to-door handyman business into a huge construction company, a very successful one in New Mexico. You were among the Republicans seeking the Republican nomination. You got into, one debate? Was it one or two debates?
Two debates.
Yeah. And then I guess felt that you left the Republican Party or they left you,
I feel like they left me, and I think I'm delivering the same message as Ron Paul, although Ron Paul and I do have differences.
Well, you're pro-choice, he's not.
Right, and marriage equality, Israel, what else? I don't want to build a fence across the border. I think that would be a waste of money.
Yeah, I think
but other than that,
in many respects, you're a true libertarian in many ways where he is not.
I wanted to point out...
Well, I'm not saying he's not a true libertarian. I think you may go a little further toward libertarianism in some areas than he does.
Well, perhaps. And in that vein, I'd like to... I'm shamelessly hucking myself here while I'm on the air. But did you see the ACLU report 3 weeks ago on all the presidential candidates? They graded all the presidential candidates. Perfect score, 24... Did you see it?
No, I did not.
24. 24 Liberty torches was the perfect score.
Yeah.
Well, Santorum and Romney 0. Gingrich 4.
Yeah.
President Obama 16. Ron Paul 18. Moi 21.
Yeah. Well, now was that going to hurt you with conservatives at the ACLU?
Well, you know what I thought about the ACLU is, I may have disagreed with the ACLU, but down deep, all the time, I always thought they were right.
But they're not. Look, these are famously they stood up for the Nazis marching in Skokie. This is not a group that is a partisan group, as much as they're portrayed that way by conservatives.
Well, they're not partisan at all. They're a group that are dedicated to civil liberties. They're a group that are dedicated to the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights.
So what is your plan now? Obviously, and we were just talking about in my statement being, and I'm not the only one to have said this, a circular firing squad among Republicans right now. And you were hearing some of the audio I was playing, both from Franklin Graham on Morning Joe this morning, and some of the stuff Santorum's been saying attacking the president's religion.
So speaking with broad brushstrokes, maybe the Libertarian Party takes the best from Democrats and takes the best from Republicans. And in this case, I think it is about a message that when Ron Paul doesn't win the Republican nomination, and as much as I support him and hope that my supporters would support him,
but he's not going to get the nomination.
I don't think he's going to get the nomination. So this message ends. This agenda ends.
Unless he becomes a third-party candidate.
Well, and it becomes, I'm going to take him at his word that he's not going to do that, but it becomes really logistically impossible if he stays in the Republican primary process the whole way through, which there's no reason why he shouldn't.
Well, he was the Libertarian Party candidate in 1988, but then he'd have to leave the Republican Party at this point. It would be a long road for him, I think.
He would have to do that at this point right now, and he would almost have to do that at this point right now to run as a third party, because you got to do the whole ballot access thing.
Could you get his support?
Well, I'm not. My thing has never been about getting support.
Do you have a relationship with him?
Well, he asked me for my support in the last election cycle in 2008, and I gave it. And when I dropped out of the Republican Party, I asked all my supporters to throw their vote his way, believing that when it comes to communication, when you hear the same message from two different sources, it resonates a bit more because you're hearing it differently, and it needs to be more than just two. It needs to be a bunch. It needs to be I was hoping it would be the whole Republican Party at some point, but that just doesn't seem to be happening at all.
They really could not have a Ron Paul with his foreign policy. They couldn't have you with you believe in gay marriage. You think you want to legalize marijuana. They couldn't withstand someone like you, and you're pro-choice. You would not be acceptable to them, as in the same way that Ron Paul on other issues is not really acceptable to them.
And because of that, this is a message then that goes beyond parties, and I'll just go back to the broad brushstrokes. I think the majority of Americans describe themselves as being classically liberal, and if you Wikipedia classical liberal, that's somebody who believes in smaller government, period. That's somebody who believes that decisions that only you and I should make that only you and I should make, as opposed to government. So that's keep the government out of the bedroom.
So, but is that, we get so confused and we get into labeling and terminology. Now, smaller government is now defined as conservative, but conservatives say they want smaller government but never create it.
There you go, and that's the outrage of Occupy Wall Street, which I share. Both parties have their hands out for you to pay them, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a group, whether you're an individual, to pay them for your special place in line, which is at the front of the line, as opposed to just an equal playing field for all.
Do you identify with the Tea Party as well?
The outrage over spending, yes.
I see. I believe
kind of the best of both.
See, when I've said this on Fox News, which has driven them crazy, when I say the Tea Party and Occupy have a lot in common, but people don't. Tea Partiers don't want to hear that.
Well, here's the in common part. The commonality is look, let's slash spending. Tea Party. But on the other hand, this country doles it out unfairly. It's unfair. And good government, from my experience as governor of New Mexico, was easy. It wasn't hard, and by easy, look at the issues first. Partisan politics doesn't even play a role, and that you can make a real difference.
When you hear what's going on in terms of the national dialogue now, and you've got, and you don't hear everything I was doing because you came into the end of last hour, but I mean, Rick Santorum saying that President Obama only joined the church he did because he was looking for political gain. I'm not sure he's a real Christian, because if he were, he'd be, and I'm of course paraphrasing, he'd be putting into policy some of the stuff that Christians are supposed to believe in. And we don't want a preacher in chief. I don't. That's not your message at all. You don't.
No. Well, this is America. This is freedom of religion. This is you and I being able to.
Right. Well, we got away from the Church of England. We left England in order to get away from a state-sponsored church. That was the whole idea. We did. Yeah.
And as much as I hate the fact that the civil liberties, the ACLU would tell a small community or a community that they can't hang a Christmas tree in the lobby and play Christmas music, in a public building. Isn't that why we became the United States of America? Isn't that why we broke away from England?
Well, either you have to allow all religions or none, right?
Exactly.
On the public square.
Exactly.
So if I'm the Church of Satan and I want to put my creche or whatever it is I have to be allowed to do that too, right?
Well, and of course there are those that make that argument, but the reality is you end up with the Christmas tree and you end up with Christmas carols and.
But if I want to sing about Satan, I have to be allowed to do that too, because it's either all or none. Either you allow all the religions or none of the religions. On the public
and
square.
it's easier to go with none. It's easier to go with none. There's an equality to that.
Right, but that's not what a conservative Republican would
I know, and I think that's why Republicans are getting further and further away from reality. I think that's why people don't like
brand
Republicans.
you as anti-God. I don't even know what your. I mean, I don't really care what your religion is.
And I know you're not going to even ask me, and I'm not going to ask you, and that's not a conversation that we're going to have.
But why do we need someone to wear their religion on their sleeve? I want. And even the anti-Romney stuff bothers me, because he's a Mormon. He's somehow not.
I hope this comes off as humorous, but I do remember one of the Christian conservative leaders in New Mexico talking to me and said, Gary, it isn't so much that I disagree with what you're saying about drugs, it's that God disagrees with what you have to say about drugs. Yeah. And I wanted to ask him at the time, with his intimate connection with God, could he just get a copy of next Thursday's Wall Street Journal? I mean, I hope that comes off tongue-in-cheek.
But can you do that in politics? You can't do it in a major political party, right?
No.
I mean, you can't do it as a Republican or a Democrat, for that matter. No. You can't do that. As a Libertarian, maybe you can. You can be more yourself, it would seem, in your current incarnation than you could have been up until now.
I believe that, and I do believe that that libertarianism, that libertarians perhaps embody the best of both parties.
All right, I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about how do you convince a liberal like me and other people on the left, for example, that you're going to cut 43% and you're going to cut here, and there, and this is a good thing.
That I have a heart. I have a heart.
But saying you're going to cut 43% doesn't sound that way when you simply. Well, let's hold that. Let's talk about that when we get back. Gary Johnson is with us. He's a former New Mexico governor. He is seeking the Libertarian Party candidacy for president. Before we get into this issue of cutting 43%, I want to talk to you about the Defense Authorization Act.
Yeah.
Which you have duly been outraged by.
Yeah, well, the notion of being able to detain any one of us as a U.S. citizen without being charged, isn't that why we fought wars?
Yeah, I'm amazed, and this is where I differ from the president. Obviously, as you know, I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm an Obama supporter, but I certainly have my differences. 30,000 troops to Afghanistan, and the Defense Authorization Act, which basically makes the homeland a theater of war.
Yes, yes. No, our civil liberties are being eroded, and this is just another example of that. Now, the administration is saying, well, they'll never invoke that clause. If I'm
then why have it?
Well, why have it? Why not veto it and send a message that that this isn't going to be language. This isn't going to be a possibility.
And the fact that a president can declare somebody an enemy combatant, even an American citizen.
And I've been out there, Alan, and you hear it too, and that is well, I'm a law-abiding citizen. This doesn't bother me.
Oh, I don't care if they knock on my door at 3 in the morning.
I don't care if they. I got nothing to hide. Right. So well, and I get into trouble. That's what happened in Nazi Germany. I mean, Nazi Germany was a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic where a country governed by laws. Constitution. The idea that they could knock on your door at 3 in the morning without a warrant and come in does not. You're a good boy or a good little girl. Therefore, let the authorities come in. That is not the country that our forefathers envisioned. No, and that's and in the history of mankind, they do that. They knock on the door and they come and they get those undesirables, and at a point they come and get you. First they came for the Jews, then they came for the socialists. Yes. Yeah. And then they came for me, and nobody was left. Let me ask you about the 43% that we've talked about cutting across the board, right? Well, it's not across the board, because some things need to be totally eliminated. Other things, like veterans' benefits, hey, that's nothing that you want to cut. You want to give veterans everything that they deserve. And they deserve everything for having gone to war. But Medicare, let's take Medicare for example. Medicaid, people fall off the chair. You're proposing a 43% reduction in Medicare. I'm just going to say that if we don't do that, we're going to be left with no health care. I'm in the camp that believes that we're going to experience a monetary collapse as a result of continuing to spend and print as much money as we are, 43 cents out of every dollar. Should we go back to the gold standard? But it's, that's not the end all. I like the notion of a gold standard, but if you look historically speaking, that had a lot of problems associated with it. Now it sounds great, but when it comes to so my understanding is that we went off the gold standard as a result of de Gaulle demanding that his U.S. Currency be exchanged for gold. Well, that was impractical. So there are a lot of caveats. You could have competing currencies. You can have commodity-based currency, and there's a way of doing that. And strong U.S. dollar as opposed to weak U.S. dollar. And we've got policies right now that are all about weak U.S. dollar. So how do you convince a liberal like me, because you're going to have liberals who agree with you on a number of issues, as you and I do agree on a number of issues, how do you get them to come all the way, though, and say, well, I'm going to cut this, and this, 43% here, take away the services that we would have? Yeah. I would argue that that we all have a heart, and that we want to provide health care to those that are truly in need. That the notion of truly in need, that's where I think we go way over the line. And if we don't rein in spending, if we don't balance expenditures with revenue, in my opinion, this is not sustainable. The mathematics of being right now at 100% of GDP, Greece is at 160% of GDP, and all these negotiations are to bring them down to 120. Greece. I mean, we've got borrowing power, we've got low interest rates. No, but we're just what are we, 6-8 years away from being in the same situation as Greece. So this is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. How do you make those cuts and allow people to get the help that they need? Have that government. So in the case of Medicaid and Medicare, I oversaw the reform of Medicaid in New Mexico. We took it from a fee-for-service model to a managed care model. We saved hundreds of millions of dollars, and we also set up better health care networks. At that time, I believe that if the federal government would have block granted me or the state of New Mexico 43% less money, done away with all the strings and the mandates that I could have effectively delivered health care to the poor. No strings, no mandates, 43% less money. I maintain the same for Medicare. So the federal government has to give it up to the states. 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice, and that's exactly what we'll have. We'll have some fabulous success get emulated. We'll have some really bad failure, too, that'll get avoided.
But aren't the states broke?
Well, the reason they're broke, the number one reason why they're broke, Alan, let me ask you that question. Why are they broke? It's because of Medicaid. It's because states can't print money. They have to balance their budgets, and the reason that they're broke is because Medicaid is open-ended. It's in many states it's still fee for service. There's no lid on Medicaid. Give it to the states, there would be a lid. So all I'm saying is, if we don't do this, we're going to be left with nothing. Russia experienced a monetary collapse at the end of the 80s. It's not pretty.
What would that look like?
In Russia, what it looked like is they developed the most sophisticated barter system the world has ever seen. First of all, the ruble wasn't worth anything. One day it was worth something, the next day it wasn't worth anything. And here's the thing about a monetary collapse. The government doesn't announce that 2 weeks from Thursday there's going to be a monetary collapse, so go out and spend all the money that you have before that time, because it won't be worth anything come 2 weeks from Thursday. It just happens. Anyway, back to Russia. You worked in the chainsaw factory. You actually walked out of the chainsaw factory on a Friday afternoon with your pay for the week, which was 2 chainsaws, and within a period of hours, it was the most sophisticated barter system the world has ever seen. Within a matter of hours, you'd traded off that chainsaw for clothing, for food, for gasoline, whatever you needed.
How do you recover from that?
How do you recover from that? Well, I don't think they've recovered yet. I don't know as they recover in our lifetimes back to where they were. Not a good situation. Do they have health care for those over 65? Are they able to offer Medicaid? No, they're not. So the alternative, I would ask you with a heart, look, don't we want to really provide medical services to those in need? I think we can do it, but we have to do it for less money.
What about the 99ers, the people who've been out of work for all these months, don't have a place to go, don't have job training? How do you provide for them?
Well, by provide for them, I'm advocating a balanced budget. I'm advocating throwing out the entire federal tax system. What government can do, in my opinion, is create an environment where jobs really do get created. In this whole presidential process, the candidate that had the best record on jobs. Well, it was me, and I was asked about it. I was asked about it as governor of New Mexico. Look, I didn't create a single job as governor of New Mexico, but I did control all the agencies. I controlled boards and commissions. I controlled rules and regulations. They got better on a daily basis with a fundamental basis in common sense. Less time, less money to comply with these regulations, not making anybody less safe, any less secure.